You're listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Elliot Rowe and Dr. Tricia Gardner.
So welcome to the show. Tricia, what have you got for us this week?
Hey, I just found an interesting study. Actually, I read two interesting studies, but I'll tell you the first one, then I'll tell you how it ties into the second one. A study was done to see if teaching mindfulness to adolescents would prevent depression. And what they found is when they took students between the ages of 13 and 20, and it was over like 5 different schools, so it ended up being over 400 students. They tested them to see, at what level of depression. And basically, at the start of the study, about 20% of the students were depressed. And so they had an experimental group, which is going to learn the mindfulness, and a control group, which did not. And then they taught them the mindfulness and had them do them, a few times a week, the sessions. And the group that was at 21%, they ended up dropping down to 15%. So it cut the depression quite a bit. Whereas with the control group, there was no cut in depression. In fact, it even went up. Now, the reason I said there's 2 studies is I also saw another study that showed that when it came to stress, men react more strongly to stress with depression or depressive type responses than women do. And it has a lot to do with the way men process emotions and things like that. So for guys, we've got 2 things here that are kind of suggesting to us that A, men are more susceptible to depression when they are under stress, and B, mindfulness-based approaches can help you reduce depression. So I think for men, these 2 studies kind of point very powerfully to the efficacy of trying out mindfulness-based meditation or approaches to, deal with your stress and reduce your depression.
Excellent stuff there. It's something we push a lot, the meditation, but there's a reason for that, and that's because it's so effective at improving people's lives. So if you haven't tried it yet, listen to us again. Go and read about mindfulness meditation or use Headspace. There's products out there. It can make a huge difference, certainly if you are suffering with some of those issues, such as depression. And it will help you at the poker table too. So great
Absolutely.
stuff. So today we've got Rob Tinnion on the show. He's a 2-time Sunday Million winner. And he also is one of the people running one of the larger backing groups, Pocarr. So let's give Rob a call. So hi, Rob. Welcome to the show. If you could introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, I'm Rob Tinnion on PokerStars. My real name is also Rob Tinnion. I started playing on Stars around 4 to 5 years ago, mainly as just a recreational player. I never had any sort of idea to play poker for a living. And I was studying my degree in motorsport engineering at the time, which was heavily math-based. And then once I sort of realized that there was a little bit more to poker than just sort of gambling, and there was sort of actual numbers that you can play with, and the more numbers you play with, the more money you make, I started to make some money. And then I eventually fell into the downward spiral of MTTs, which is thinking I'm better than I was and punting my roll. I have ended up joining the backing stable Pocarr, playing very, very low stakes. I think I was playing 11 freeze-outs, so an ABI of like $5-6 total. And I ended up working my way basically to the top of that group, winning the Sunday Million twice in the process, just casually. And I became an investor in Pocarr in late 2013, once they realized how great I am, obviously. And yeah, now I coach Pocarr players, I mentor them, I run them, so to speak. And I am starting a training site called max-value.com.
So you're not busy at all?
No, not at all. It's quite a small stable, really. We only have 100. I think we have 182 players right now. But luckily, about 40 to 50 of them are Brazilian, and we have other managers for them. So it's not too bad.
And how did you find the transition from being a full-time professional poker player to suddenly taking on that responsibility to coaching and managing that number of poker players?
It was really weird at first because I was sort of, for the last 4 to 5 years, my schedule was wake up, eat, play poker, eat, sleep, that sort of thing. And then, so it was kind of weird to wake up and go, oh, I don't have to click register. I don't have to rush home from the shops to late register the Hot 33 to get that $3 in EV from getting home that quickly. yeah, it was quite weird to start, but it was a lot less stress because there was a lot less things hanging over me. For some reason, I always felt I had to make certain games in the schedule, no matter what. So I would sort of ditch other things in life to make sure I did this. Like even playing on Sundays, like I could never really go out on a Saturday night and play a full Sunday session. Then all of a sudden, I had Saturday nights free, so I could go out and socialize a bit more. It's fun.
What a revolutionary concept, right? Actually get away from your computer. And
I know, it was crazy. And like, I didn't even have the internet when I was out either. It's crazy.
Well, I do want to ask you, because you're one of the few people who has won the Sunday Million twice. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to kind of just navigate your way through, large field tournaments like that? Maybe kind of the roller coaster ride and how you mentally handle that and prepare for that.
Sure. So I think most of the listeners will understand the basis of MTTs, but there's going to be lots and lots of spots, especially in these big field tournaments where you are going to be all in with your tournament live in very high equity spots quite frequently. So there's a lot of sort of sometimes physical sweating and mental sweating, so to speak. Just sort of all of these swings and, am I going to win this flip? And you win the flip when there's 30 left, you can be chip leader. You lose a flip when there's 30 left and you're out. And there's these huge, huge spots, especially in the Sunday Million where the structure is not too great. So the average stack is very shallow. So you have to sort of go into a tournament like this, for example, with the mindset of, I'm going to have to get it in. I can't just sit there and fold my way to victory you won't. That everyone else will just pass you by. Some people will run better, some people will run worse, but you're just going to end up blinding out. And I think, you always have to have a solid understanding of the MTT you're playing. So, for example, a similar field size would be the WSOP main event, but the structure is a lot better. So you don't have to go into a hand thinking, right, if I get dealt ace 4 off now, I'm all in, and I'm going to be playing for maybe $100,000. But you're a lot deep stacked. You can navigate a lot easier and take your time. I think that answered your question. I just said a lot of words. I hope it made sense.
Was there a big difference for you between that first win in the Sunday Million and the way you felt going towards that win, and then when it happened a second time for you?
Yeah, there was a big difference because at the time of the first one, I just got back from Vegas, bricked it pretty hard, as most people do, and my finances were okay, but I was still feeling a little bit of pressure because I still had the Pocarr, everything behind there backing me up, and I ran good. I mean, everybody knows I ran good to win 1, let alone 2. But I was never the big stack. I was always sort of mid of the pack, and I only really took the chip lead once we got 3-handed. And I just played fairly safe and just picked my spots very well. So there was always a lot of spots where I wouldn't open into the big stacks unless there was sort of me, then a big stack, then a short stack, because then the big stack wouldn't be attacking me too wide, because then he would sort of be committing himself to call off the short stack and stuff like that. And then the short stacks are always going to be playing extremely tight in those situations. They don't want to get it in because there's lots of money on the line. So yeah, in the first one, I was very at the mercy of the cards, and obviously my confidence wasn't as high. So there was I think there was a few spots, I'm not 100% sure, but where I failed to pull the trigger in certain situations. In the second one, though, I was a lot more confident, had a lot more money to my name. I sort of knew exactly what I had to do. I knew I had to get it in wide. I knew I had to abuse these people when they got deep. So I don't know if you guys see the hand history review, which you can find on maxvalue.com. I opened sort of 6-4 off from middle position and stuff like that because everybody is just playing so ridiculously tight. I remember seeing on the final table replay a guy raids folds ace queen off of about 8 big 10 or 8 big blinds to me. He is actually correct because I have ace king. But it's just that's the kind of standard of play you're playing against, and I think you need to understand that in these big soft field tournaments. So even though it was crazy, and it is very, very crazy, you have to be prepared for that. And yeah, in the second one, as I try and get back on track, I was sort of chip leader for a lot of it. I had a decent chip lead for the start of the final table. I did play a bit badly, in my opinion, on the final table, but I eventually sort of put it all together and ran good again. But I also played well, obviously, in both of them, extremely well.
What do you think has allowed you, because you've been around the game now for a while and you're coaching and you're mentoring, and I know like the purpose of your site, and you can talk more about this, but is to help players who are maybe kind of stuck. But what has been your secret to really keeping up with the game and evolving and not getting left behind?
Well, my approach to the game, because as I said, I have a very mathematical background. So if someone says you can't do that, like whatever it is, you can't peel the big blind off of 8 big blinds, I go, why? And then if they can't give me an answer, if they can't say, oh, well, here you go, 2 plus 3 plus 7 equals 12, I think, then I will be like, well, here you go, here's the math, here's what I think. I think 2 plus 3 plus 7 equals 12. And then that's kind of the thing. Like, if you can't make sense, like, I'm not this GTO wizard, but I understand the math. And if you can't make sense of it from a mathematical point of view, it doesn't make sense to me. If someone just goes, I don't believe his range is actually strong enough here, so I'm going to call. Then what do you make of that? And I find that's kind of the similar thing with a lot of pros and quote unquote pros and training sites. It's like my opinion versus their opinion. And then I'm like, well, I'll take the average of your opinions, run it in through all this calculators and stuff. I've already lost the attention of a lot of people because I'm talking about math. And the people that are left over, they go, oh yeah, that's probably right. And then that's kind of, I sort of learned the math, like the basic math from, I think Adam Sherman was on your thing a while ago, Squee 451. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot of my math from him, and then I sort of ran with it. So I sometimes I'd run with it too far, and he'd say, oh, this guy has a C-bet of 100% over 10 samples. And I would go, oh, this guy has a C-bet of 100% over 1 sample. And I would go, so if I take an average of the amount of times he's going to have 1 sample, and I don't know, I'm going to assume that he is C-betting too much, therefore I raise. And I would sort of run with that. And like the math is basically my entire approach to poker. What else did you ask? I can't remember.
That as an approach to teaching players, as you say, you're creating this site to help people go from being break-even players or perhaps slight winners in the game. What is it that you feel that your site's going to teach differently?
I think it's going to spell things out in a lot easier to like sort of digest method. And like I said, with like my 2 plus 2 equals 4 approach, like it's hard to argue when someone says 2 plus 2 equals 4. There's not going to be people writing threads about, no, he's wrong. It's 5. It's 5. It definitely equals 5. So like, there's just very little up for debate. Like there's little things up for debate, but it's like, very, very small things. For the most part, everything is going to be a plus EV play or whatever. And it's also, I also feel like I bring a lot more logic to the table. Like I assume you both are familiar with the Twitch streamers. I watch a lot of them to see how their thought processes work. And a lot of them are very, very far behind the curve. No offense to them, but they are. And I believe that they're still playing a style of poker which can be profitable in certain situations. They do have a certain skill set which I don't actually have, which I'm sort of jealous of, because they do have this sort of ability, this God-given gift to play poker and play well. Like, so me and them can come to the same conclusions, but they've gone, plucked a number out of the air and gone, all right, I think that. And I've sort of studied all of this over a massive sample and gone, right, okay, I think this, here's my math, here's my equations, I think this is the correct answer. And I think that approach is far more easier to teach, whereas teaching, if you want to play like me, learn my instinct. It's like, I don't have your instinct. It's pretty tough to copy that. Yeah, I think that's basically it. Again, forgot on your question.
So let's say somebody's listening right now and they think, they're behind the curve or maybe, they haven't been playing as well as they want to or whatever. What are just a few things or even a couple things that you would recommend that they get started with right now that you think will have the biggest payoff in terms of improving their game?
Well, obviously, aside from buy everything on maxvalue.com, on a serious note, the main, especially I'm only an MTT player. I say only because cash players just dwarf us in every single aspect of the game. They're just way ahead of the curve when it comes to MTTs anyway. For MTTs, I would just cut out all turbos, if like maybe play some of the hots, because the edges in those games are extremely, extremely small, and they're massive variance, and there's really not much point in playing them. So you could play like a $55 turbo, where you're probably max ROI. If you're a good player, it's 20%. So if you're top in the world, you can have a 20% ROI in a $55 turbo. So you're making $10 a game. Whereas if you play a $22 freeze out on PokerStars, you can have a 50% ROI and higher. So you're making the same $10 a game, but you at less variance and less risk. So like it's all about the dollars per game. I think you need to sort of view poker in that sort of thing, not go, oh my god, this $1 rebuy has 10k for the win. Oh wait, but my EV is only like 10 cents. So you need to see it in sort of a mathematical way, in my opinion. The other thing sort of would be, if you are questioning yourself and you aren't sure, then you should probably just drop down in stakes immediately, because like you're not going to end up doing well. Like, especially the worst thing that can happen if you are questioning yourself and you actually aren't good at poker, the worst thing that can happen to you is to have a big score, because then you will likely punt it all off. Which is, I mean, I've seen, oh god, I must have shot scoped at least, I don't know, 1,000, 2,000 more applicants. And I very, very, very rarely see somebody have a lot of success early in their career and continue that success throughout their career. Usually if someone binks big early, they just lose straight away, because they're trying to replicate that success, and they'd obviously ran in the top 1% of 1% of the 1%. And it just ends very, very badly most of the time, apart from the few that manage to have that God-given gift.
And when it comes to selection, you mentioned that your backing group has 180 people that you back.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go through that process with them?
Most of it's down to results. Like if you're a losing player, if you're a losing player, but you happen to have like a doctorate in engineering, you're a chess grandmaster, then we'll probably take you on. But for the most part, it's down to results. If you're not winning, then you're out. There's also game selection, like we said. So we want to find people that are sort of already on the sort of mindset that we're into, or sort of, that sort of approach. And volume is also a big thing. So like if a guy applies to us and he's up 200, 500k in the last two instances before 2010, and now decides he wants to get back into poker, then we know the game's passed him by. He's going to want to play high, and he's not going to be good at those games. So he'd have, if in order for us to have like a plus EV deal, we'd probably be playing like an ABI of $10, and he'd probably still be losing or something. I'm not sure. I might be wrong there, but it's mainly results, volume. That's kind of it. We ask questions, like what's your background education, etc., etc., etc. If a guy, it's very rarely we won't take a guy because of those answers if they have good volume and good results.
Now, when somebody comes on with Pocarr, what is the training process? Because, maybe they're a losing player or maybe they're a break-even player or something like that. How do y'all kind of shape and mold them into a winner?
We have a library of over 1,000 videos, which features videos from me, MJW006, who is, I believe, top 10 on Pocket Fives, but I might be lying. We can pretend that we recorded this a long time ago when he was, which is only a few months. What else have we got? We've got Ape Styles, who is probably one of the best poker players in the world, who he doesn't produce videos for us because he has a contract with a training site who shall not be mentioned. But as a Google search will easily find that. No, honestly, Ape Styles is probably one of the best players in the world on card runners. So if anyone's looking for higher stakes content, there's literally no one better for that than him. And was about selection. Yeah. Training. So then we have all the videos, and we have I'm not sure how much information I should divulge here. We have a lot of other coaches who can help you. Who's like sort of their sort of homegrown coaches, so to speak, who sort of subscribe to our theories, etc., etc., etc. And we sort of make sure they have money on time. We have a welcome packet which explains what we expect from them, what we want them to do, etc. And they should sort of follow that. So a lot of the time there'll be a recommended viewing list, and a very easy way to tell who is going to be a worker and who isn't. Like, we're giving you a chance to sort of change your life and win lots of money. We say you should watch this video or this bunch of videos. If they haven't watched those within the first week, usually we just cut them straight away because they haven't demonstrated skills or ability, sort of traits that we look for in a winning poker player.
And how important do you think hard work is in 2016?
It's probably the most important thing. I would say at least a 20% study, 80% play ratio is minimum. I think if you're doing less than 5 hours a week of study, if you're serious about really getting into poker or really winning at poker, I think 5 hours a week of study is probably the minimum. Otherwise, you're just sort of going to be, unless you're one of these God-given gifts. I remember listening to Paul Volpe and the other guy on TPE, and both of them were talking about how they literally know zero math when it comes to poker. They don't know what it is. They don't know how to calculate anything. They might have been trolling. I'm not sure if so. They've trolled me. But those guys are better than me, and they're extremely good at what they do. But that doesn't translate into a format which can be taught to someone else. Like, oh, just do that. That's what I do. And like, they're the kind of people that can sort of tell you what to do in a spot and be correct. But you don't have the time to just go through a billion spots with these people and learn what they do in every single spot. What we try and teach, and what I try and teach on Max Value, is the thought process and give you the skills to solve every single hand on your own. So rather than say, what should I do here with ace queen, Rob? And I say fold. Like, great, you know what to do with ace queen in that spot, but what do you do with the next spot, next spot, next spot? Whereas if you say, what should I do with my range here? Or what should I do? What should I be doing? How do I work out what I should be doing here? Then I go, oh, this is how you work it out. Here's the calculations, blah, 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 blah. And he never has to ask that question again in that similar spot with any hand, because he now knows what to do.
Providing fishing nets rather than meals.
Exactly that, yeah. Teach a man to... Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so now... I want to ask you this because I feel like we talked, last summer during the World Series. Right now, we're about 6 weeks away from the World Series, 6-7 weeks, something like that, from the start of it. So for our listeners who are MTT players and, they're going to the World Series because everybody does, do you have some type of framework or strategy or tips that you can offer for them to work on in the next 6-7 weeks to, hopefully get their game, to the highest level it can be in this time frame?
Well, that's pretty tough because there's such a wide variety of listeners, I imagine. You've got high stakes and novices, so to speak.
Let's go like maybe not a complete novice, but certainly not a high stakes. So, kind of...
Buying into 1,500, someone buying into 1,500.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, be patient is probably the best thing, especially if you're an online player moving to live, especially because I can obviously relate to that a bit more than some American who doesn't play online. Then half an hour of folding may seem like a lifetime. When online, it's like a few minutes. So that's the biggest thing. And I think you should always sort of look at things objectively and not sort of think about past things like, oh, I just had to fold jacks. Now I've got ace queen, and this guy's 3-betting me. Just think about more that spot in isolation, not everything else that happens. I know a lot of people get worked up. I just had to make 2 big folds, and now I'm going to have to make a third. Screw it, I'm going to go all in. I see a lot of that sort of puntiness. I sort of identify the weak spots of your table, which is fairly simple to do, given, no offense to the entire 1,500 field, but the majority, there's a decent amount which do have these fundamental flaws. Like if you see a guy limp ace queen on the button with 10 big blinds and then call a jam. No, well, I mean, that's probably a bad example, actually, because that could be good versus certain players. There's so many ifs and buts with poker. But, or a guy folds ace queen face up to a jam from the button. He definitely is never a winning play unless the guy showed him aces, etc. But yeah, identifying, watching the game. So don't be sat there on your phone, texting people about how crazy or whatever the games are. Just make sure you sort of make a mental note or make a physical note on what the guys are doing, because then that will help you to sort of recollect, oh, I've seen this guy fold ace queen in this spot before. I can jam any 2 cards because I know he's folding so much. And sort of that's how I would approach it. Although I'm not the best one for live advice, I must admit.
But I'm thinking, you have such a background in teaching and training people. So, I'm kind of thinking from that aspect of it. Would you recommend that people, now again, I'm kind of thinking of Americans that are going to go play the 1,000 or the 1,500s. And so maybe they don't get an opportunity to do a lot of, online play or whatever. So what would you recommend in terms of any videos, trainings, whatever that, anybody could have access to? Because obviously people cannot have access to Pocarr unless they're with Pocarr. Do you have any advice on that?
Well, aside from my site, actually, on my site, I have one thing that I shouldn't even say out loud because now other sites are probably going to copy it. But there's a Nash shove chart, which basically every MTT in the world knows about. It was created by John Nash, who, if you've seen the film A Beautiful Mind, he's the guy in that. It's created using the Nash equilibrium. So basically, if you follow these charts, you will never, ever, ever be making a losing play. This is for short stack strategies. So if you, like on my site, if you make an account and you can download this for free, because it's not like it's something that I've thought of and I'm just a genius and I'm the only person that has access to it. Everybody has access to it, but for some reason it gets left behind. Even top pros, well, not top, but arguable pros don't use this sheet still when they should be. I've noticed many, many people not jamming wide enough, even my own players, because they feel like they know it, because they know about it, therefore they know it. And it's just a flaw in thinking. So I would download that, and you can actually have it at the table. There's a not famous. For me, it was quite eye-opening. But when WCG Ryder, who is one of the best heads-up players in the world, won his 1K, I think, Turbo WSOP bracelet, he said he was just looking at his Nash sheet. He said, I have 13 big blinds. Guys, I'm going to jam 35% from the cutoff to this hand. And then he would just carry on. It's very, very simple. And you can basically play your 12 big blind stack just as well as Phil Ivey does, if not better, because I'm not sure Phil Ivey is using the Nash shove chart. That might be a bit too wild of an accusation, but you can play just as well as the top pros with your short stacks if you just follow this shove chart. There are deviations to be made for high EV plays, like you don't want to be jamming aces with 20 big blinds because you want to raise and induce, and there's other things like that, so you have to adjust certain ranges, and then you have to obviously fold a little bit more because you've now taken out the top of your range, so you have to take out the bottom of your range as well, etc., etc., etc. But for the most part, that's the best advice I can offer in a 2-minute window or whatever that was.
and it's got the right price on it, which is free. So
yeah, free is very good. And like that's one of the things that I plan to do with this site is that, I mean, I've seen many, many people succeed through my own intervention and others, and I'm one of the people that benefited from Pocarr's intervention. And it is a great feeling when you see, especially people from poorer countries like India, not shooting shots at India, but no offense, your economy is not too great. When you see them succeed in poker, so we see guys that have come to us with very little, and now having a 5K score for Indians is like becoming a millionaire overnight. So it is great to see people all over the world just crushing and like living a much better life through mine and others' intervention. And I'm willing to sort of, I don't mind doing I'm doing a lot of legwork with this site just to like help people live a better quality of life. And I'm in it for the money as well, obviously, but I also would like to see a lot of people succeed and have a good community and sort of stay away from the stereotypical poker online troll that sits there and grinds in his underwear, and sort of have people living healthy lives with lots of money. And all thanks to me, that is kind of the dream.
And when you talk about that sort of healthy life, how important do you think that life balance, the exercise, the diet, all of those things are for poker players these days?
I think it's, again, like study and this are probably the two most important things for a poker player. I mean, playing poker is probably not the most important thing for a poker player, to be honest. Elliot as Elliot has already knows, I started working with him just over a year ago, and I was at 36% body fat. So I've not been doing this sort of stuff all my life, and I started working with a personal trainer, and now I'm at 15. I've had a few swings here and there because of Vegas and whatnot. So I've had a few swings, but now I'm back down. I'm down to 15%, feeling great. I go to the gym. I have 15 hours of personal training a week with 2 different personal trainers. I have like a running trainer and like a strength and conditioning trainer. And then I run like 6K on a Sunday. I'm not allowed to run any more than 6K on a Sunday, I've been told. And that's kind of what I do before my Sunday sessions now, is I go for like a 6K run. The other week I did 12K and then fell asleep. It wasn't too good. And yeah, I think Elliot's probably preached this before as well. I work with Elliot a lot, if nobody can tell, where sort of the high stakes heads up cash games guys will break even for the first few hours of their session, and then when the stamina starts to the people who have less stamina will start to make more mistakes and bigger mistakes over like hour 6, hour 7, etc. And in MTTs, you're talking about tournaments that potentially go on for like 10, 12 hours, or even if the main event, 7 days. And seventh day of poker, if you're not, on top of your physical fitness or mental fitness, it'd be pretty tough to really be playing your A game. So I think people need to really think about it more as a profession, and a lot of people treat it like a hobby, and they just sort of loll around without lack of a better word.
I think they underestimate, too, the amount of stamina that is required for MTTs. People just think, I'm just sitting there. I'm not really doing anything. I'm not lifting heavy objects or something. And they don't realize that it takes a tremendous amount of mental stamina and physical stamina. And the two are often, different sides of the same coin, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've really gone the extra mile, so to speak, to get your fitness. And as a result of that, have you already started noticing, monetary benefits?
I mean, yeah, I feel great on infinitely greater on a daily basis. Maybe not infinitely, but a lot greater. And like when I play my online sessions now, I don't even have a computer chair. I have a exercise ball, which I recommended Elliot to get as well.
Yeah.
And so that sort of keeps your core active when you're playing. It does get uncomfortable-ish sometimes, so I end up standing up, and standing up is obviously better than sitting. I was actually at the final table of this $22 20K on Stars a few weeks ago. And when the final table is kind of slow because everyone starts tanking a bit more because they're actually paying attention as opposed to playing 20 tables, which I also don't advise. I advise playing 6 to 9 tables. Another one for the question earlier. And I was there doing sort of bicep curls, and then I was sort of doing sit-ups on my exercise ball while they're playing their hands. And then I was like, things have changed in the last year a bit, haven't they? Whereas before I might be sort of sipping on whiskey and sort of on Skype chatting with friends. And yeah, it's been a bit of a transformation.
Amazing.
I do enjoy whiskey still, though. I must admit, but I have to limit myself.
Just a quick question. We usually ask what the craziest tilt someone's seen, but I guess with 180-odd horses for your stable, what's the craziest thing that you've seen from that side, being a backer?
I mean, we've had a lot of guys steal from us. God, this is just advertising people to steal. We won't give you money unless you are actually good at poker. So don't come into us expecting to steal straight away. You have to put some work in. But I think we had one guy. He stole from us, but he disappeared for a few weeks. I'm like, okay, we have to put up the site. This guy is a thief.com. And then we sort of informed the poker community. And then he messaged us saying, "What's this all about? I didn't steal from you. I just took some money and went for a holiday." It's like, what? You took our money and went for a holiday, but didn't steal from us. And it's just that's the kind of risk we run with backing, is that some people are not quite logical with their thought processes very often.
So be careful, right?
Yeah.
Start small.
Yeah.
Words to live by.
Among other things. Yeah. Okay.
Where can people find your site again, Rob? Where can they find you on Twitter? Things like that.
I just made it, and I can't remember. Max Value Poker is the Twitter handle, and the website is max-value.com. I will not be referring to it as max-value.com every single time. It's just more so you guys remember to put the hyphen in there. Otherwise, I think you get to a shipping industry. And there should be a link below this, so you can click that one. My personal one is at the Tinnion, because my cousin, who's called Rachel Tinnion, stole Tinnion.
And in terms of Pocarr, if people want to talk about staking with you guys?
www.pocarr.com. Just fill out the application form and go from there. If you want to put down, you heard the reference from here, sort of, maybe I can give Elliot and Trisha a little bit of your action. So thank you for a little bit of a plug here.
So everyone out there, make sure you mention you heard about it on our radio.
Yeah, for sure. And tell your friends as well, and then you can refer a friend, and you get 2%. You get 2% of what we make from that as well. So if you're not looking for backing, but nobody knows somebody who's looking for backing, then we're always looking at applications. Like I said, we've got 180 odd people, and we're always looking for more. We've probably the best management team, obviously because I'm in there, and best coaching around for the most part. There are other stables which do offer good deals, but I will not be mentioning much more of them.
There we go. Okay, Rob. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Good luck with launching the site, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks. See you soon.
Cheers, Rob.
Bye.
Bye.
So great to have Rob on the show, giving us all those secret tips.
He really parted with quite a bit of information there. If people, weren't listening too closely, I wrote down several things that I thought, this could really make a difference to me in my game.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, if you are there and you're breaking even or you're a losing MTT player currently, definitely lots of tips. Listen to that interview again with a pen and paper, write those things down. It will make a huge difference to your game if you follow that advice.
It sounds like, you really have to get your math nailed down. And I think a lot of people don't want to do that because they're sort of math phobic, or they're like, oh, I wasn't good at math in school or whatever. But you really have to get over that because the poker math is not really that advanced. So if you can do maybe 8th grade algebra, you can do this. And even if you're a bit rusty, there's some, good resources. And the other thing was interesting, Elliot, was how much talk he put into about the stamina and maybe people not realizing that you need to get your physical capacity up.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's something that we cover quite a lot. There's a reality here. In MTTs especially, you only really make the good money at the final table and then really only the top 3 places. You need to have a sharp mind and be physically ready. Not just in the first 2 hours of the session, but usually it's most important 10 to 12 hours into your session. And that's where that fitness will pay off.
And besides that, it sounds like you need to pick your spot super well, which means you're going to have to know the math, and you need to abuse people every chance you get. And I really like that
part. So keep that in mind. So Trisha, where can people find out about you and your stuff?
You can check me out over at www.drtrishacardner.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Trisha Cardner.
And I'm on PokerMindCoach.com. I will talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
You've been listening to the Mindset Advantage podcast with Elliot Rowe and Dr. Trisha Cardner. To get any resources mentioned in the episode or to listen to past shows, visit PokerMindCoach.com/TMA podcast. Thanks for listening.